our reading today. We've got a few readings, but the first one is this interpretation of Psalm 60 by Christine Robinson. I feel cast adrift and alone among a people who don't care about doing right or following you. I am angry and discouraged. Help us back, take us back, force us back, before we do irreparable harm to your creation. Shake the earth, flood the land, burn us up, dry us out. Especially come close so that we can see you, know your love for us and for all the earth. A still small voice in the heart. You are all mine, I claim you. I walk with you when you do my will. I nudge you to life. I help you in hard times. Together we will prevail. I love that psalm because it really shows the human predicament so clearly. And how do we respond to a divided nation, divided country? Place where there's a lot of sanctioned cruelty and brokenness. There's an icon that I have used. I've spent many hours praying with it. I'm going to share it with you here. It's Jesus asleep in the boat while the storm comes. A few of you will know that I trained as a boat builder, and in that time that I first trained, I bought this icon, which I then gifted to one of my friends, and then built a boat while living in her house and got to pray with it again for many months. Nature and spiritual art can really help us heal and hear that still small voice. So I'm going to stop talking now and sing a little bit and let you look at the icon. The earth gives way, the mountains move, the nations rage. God hauls it all. The oceans roar, you are the Lord of all, the one who calms the wind and makes my heart be still. Be still and know that I am God. Be still and know that I am. Be still and know that Be still and know that Be still and know. Be still and be still. Be. Icons are described as windows into God. And they're a spiritual practice I use very often. So my second meditation is this time from another very influential media, The Sound of Music. Just before the Mother Abbess sings Climb Every Mountain, she says this: Maria, these walls were not meant to shut out problems. You have to face them. You have to live the life you were born to live. And the point of praying with an icon or singing a song of peace is to integrate that so that you can then share that with your neighbors, with your community, with yourself when you watch the news. The spiritual practice isn't to take us away from our problems. It's actually to take us towards them with more peace and wholeness. And even outside of church and religious context, everybody knows this. This next thing that I'm going to share with you was on Facebook yesterday. It's a poem. You'll probably ask. So it's by Julia Myers. It's called The New Quilt of Humanity. And the image is a painting of the process and vision of the peace agreement by Paula Nicho Gomez. The old threads are unraveling. Get your needles ready. We are stitching a new quilt of humanity. Bring your old t-shirts, worn out jeans, scarves, antique gowns, aprons, old pockets of plenty, who have held earth's treasures, stones, feathers, leaves, love notes on paper. Each stitch a mindful meditation. Each piece of material a story. The more colour the better. So call in the tribes, threads of brown, white, red, orange. Women from all nations, start stitching. Let's recycle the hate, the abuse, the fear, the judgment. Turn it over, wash it clean, wring it out to dry. It's a revolution of recycled wares. Threads of green, blues, purples, colourful threads of peace, kindness, respect, compassion are being stitched from one continent to the next. Over forests, oceans, mountains. The work is hard, your fingers may bleed, but each cloth stitched together brings together a community, a world, our future world, under one colourful quilt. The new quilt of humanity. Amen. So the third meditation stop on our meandering meditation today is listening to and imitating those who hold peace. So borrowing strength from our big brothers and sisters. Brother Wayne Teasdale writes this: People's hearts must change before structures can change. This change is the basis of genuine reform and renewal. We need to understand, to really grasp on an elemental level, that the definitive revolution is the spiritual awakening of humankind. Peace Pilgrim says this: In my approach, I have chosen the positive. I never think of myself as protesting against something, but rather as witnessing for harmonious living. Those who witness for present solutions. I love her words there. Those who witness for present solutions. And as we look at peace today, holding a vision of peace doesn't mean turning a blind eye to that which is wrong. No, you see all of it. But you strengthen that emerging peace, that emerging wholeness and healing right there in the midst of all that's wrong. Now, Peace Pilgrim also gives us some key into how to really do this in a way that is working in alignment with God. When she was talking about prayer, she said the most important part of prayer is what we feel and not what we say. Remember, she's talking specifically about prayers and action for peace, because the two for her were inseparable. The most important part of prayer is what we feel, not what we say. And we spend a great deal of time telling God what we think should be done, and not enough time waiting in stillness for God to tell us what to do. It seems clear to me that the people who model peace the best have heart and feeling as a core ingredient in their actions. The last person we're going to borrow from here is Saint Teresa of Calcutta. And these words that are attributed to her really are like a practical guide of turning the other cheek. What does that look like in the small details? Here's the quote. People are often unreasonable, irrational, and self-centered. Forgive them anyway. If you're kind, people may accuse you of selfish, ulterior motives. Be kind anyway. If you are successful, you will win some unfaithful friends and some genuine enemies. Succeed anyway. If you are honest and sincere, people may deceive you. Be honest and sincere anyway. What you spend years creating, others could destroy overnight. Create anyway. If you find serenity and happiness, some may be jealous. Be happy anyway. The good that you do today will often be forgotten. Do good anyway. Give the best you have, and it will never be enough. Give your best anyway. Because in the final analysis, it's between you and your God. It's never between you and them anyway. So stop 4 on our meditations around peace is my grandfather. So here's his autobiography. His name was Walter Harry Devoyle. And he was a clergyman, just like me. And when I got ordained, my parents gave me his tab. It's made out of linen. So this is him signing up to be a soldier in World War I. He was really old when he had my dad, and my dad was quite old when he had me. And I know I look 22, but I'm actually 45. And if you add all that up, I have a grandfather who died in the 1960s who fought in World War I. And he went in as a cleric, and he came out as a minister. He had a very unusual experience because he spoke fluent German. Here's a picture of him as an officer. And I want to tell you one of the stories I read in this marvelous book that my parents printed up recently, his war memoir. He's talking, so this is just around the time of Battle of the Somme, just before, and he's leading an offensive, and they're in the trenches, and they run out onto no man's land, and there's supposed to be explosions going off on either side, and his battalion is supposed to break through. And something goes terribly wrong, and the explosions happen above them instead of to their left. And my grandfather is absolutely terrified. And he turns around and he's running back for the trenches. And remember, if he runs, he'll get shot as a deserter. So he's in this moment of absolute sheer terror, turns around to run, and he hears a voice that says, "Sir, sir." And he stops and he looks down, and there's a man whose legs have been blown off in the explosion. And the man says, "Sir, I can't walk." And that is the experience that brought my grandfather back to his senses, in which he went and he found somebody else, and they dragged the man who later died back. And it's quite a gory example, but I wanted to raise it because even in the worst, the most awful situation, God is present in everything, especially in us. And one of the things that happens in us is that compassion can wake us up to peace, to our roles and responsibilities, so that we can find a way through the most horrific battles. And I know this to be true already because I used to work with queer homeless youth and with violent men, and I did voluntary work in prisons. And I remember that even in the most, what you would think was the most awful, helpless situation, there was humor and laughter, and people found strength, and there was friendship and help. That even in the most distressing social situations, God is present. One of my favorite Christian teachers is James Finley, and he says, "God protects us from nothing, but unexplainably sustains us in all things." Now please know that James Finley had a violent alcoholic father that used to beat him, and his childhood was far from peaceful. And he says, God protects us from nothing, but unexplainably sustains us in all things. When we move, God moves in us, with us. When we move, God moves with us. So the seventh beatitude, blessed are the peacemakers, for they shall be called the sons of God. I have to change that. They shall be called the children of God. Blessed are the peacemakers, for they shall be called the children of God. Now, translation of the Aramaic for this that Neil Douglas Clutch suggests goes like this. Ripe are those who exert themselves, planting health and wholeness in every season. Notice it's every season. Ripe are those who exert themselves, planting health and wholeness in every season. In them, a place will be prepared for oneness. A channel will be dug for unity to flow. He also suggests this as an alternative translation for blessed are the peacemakers. Healed are those who bear the fruit of sympathy and safety for all. They shall hasten the coming of God's new creation. They shall hasten the coming of God's new creation. And Peace Pilgrim paraphrases this quite well when she says, one in harmony with God's law of love has more strength than an army, for one need not subdue an adversary. The adversary can be transformed. A pivotal story in the book of my grandfather that I never met is he used to be a runner. He used to run through the front lines carrying messages. And one time he was running and he heard a German soldier call out, Wasser, Wasser. And of course my grandfather, who was working in a business that had offices in Germany spoke German, and he stopped and he gave the German injured soldier who'd just come to his flask to drink from. And the man tanked it, and then they had a conversation, and my grandfather told him where to go to get back to the German line. I don't think this was particularly unusual. I suspect there was lots of encounters between soldiers who were not fighting in the moment, who helped each other out. And the title of the memoir is Alle Soldaten sind Kameraden, which means all soldiers are comrades. And one of the things that happened to my grandfather was that he was captured in Battle of the Somme and marched with his soldiers. He was the only officer left, small band of soldiers. They got marched to Poland. And there was one day he describes that they had been walking all day in the heat. And he went to the guard and spoke to him and said, "Sir, we've been marching all day in the heat. My men are dying of thirst. Please give us some water." And the German guard gave him his flask. And my grandfather took it and drank from it, and it was full of wine. And my grandfather would tell the story of how water was turned to wine, and how kindness was found in the least expected places. And I think that water to wine story was one of the pivotal reasons that he became an Episcopalian priest as soon as he got back from serving in Germany. So I find the metaphor of water to be very helpful in understanding how to co-create with peace. I was going to skip something out for time, but I realize I have to say it. The story of a refugee baby born out of wedlock, being born in a stable, and also the story of an innocent man condemned to death by his community and nailed to a cross, show that God's truth is not a hero action figure. And we're not asked to be heroes. This is an immature ideology. This is an immature way of thinking for both masculinity, but also the way that we see God. We have to stop striving, dominating, correcting, fighting, demanding. The superhero Jesus needs to go. That concept is not who Jesus was. Jesus doesn't fix people from the outside. He doesn't come down on a cloud of righteousness to turn the key and release Nelson Mandela from unfair imprisonment. No, the Christ works tirelessly in a different way, persistently, within the hearts of millions of people to bring genuine healing, transformation, and wholeness. The Christ in millions of people and a multitude of actions turned the key that released Nelson Mandela from years of unjust imprisonment. And the metaphor of water can help us here in understanding how God works and how to co-create peace with him, her. So water dissolves rocks. It can freeze and crack open buildings slowly and in harmony with the seasons and time, always finding its pathway home to the ocean, transforming the face of the earth and giving life to the world. Water is a particularly useful metaphor when it comes to peace, because even though we know that peace is a way and not an end destination, we still look out for outcomes when we think of peace. And we overlook the multitude of tiny little things that are bringing this kingdom into being. Peace Pilgrim encourages us when she said, whenever you bring harmony into an unpeaceful situation, you contribute to the cause of peace. Those who seem to fail pave the way and often contribute more than those who finally succeed. We need to stop looking for outcomes when it comes to peace and get on with the work of it, living the song. Now, something about this divided nation and election that really stood out for me is that the 0.1% can make all the difference. I've never noticed that before. And it reminded me of Saint Therese of Lisieux. Hey, I've got a little picture of her. Let me find it. So this is Saint Therese of Lisieux, who was born about just over 100 years ago. She's often called the little flower in the Catholic Church. She died at 24 of tuberculosis. She was a very sickly person who wasn't able to do big things. And she did small things with incredible love. And she teaches the small, determined action for compassion, justice, and empowerment can tip the scales and make a very real difference. So I've got a piece of homework for us if you would like to take it on. Is to think about a person who brought you peace. It could be in a very small way, but I suspect the person that will come to mind, they helped you at a time that you had great need. And that thing, whatever they did, big or small, made the world of a difference. Didn't necessarily fix your situation, but it was part of the way of peace, the journey towards wholeness. I'm going to give you an example. And it's a very small thing, and this is my point today, which is we have to do the small things. We have to be empowered to do the small things. And it was after I left the Abbey in 2009, I had a bit of a breakdown. I told you all about that. And I went to live with my parents. And some days I wouldn't be able to really make it through the whole day, and I would go to bed in the middle of the day just to escape and be still. I'm sure some of you have also done that when you're really struggling. Just get into bed and pull up the covers. And I remember one time my father noticing and coming in and sitting down on the bed for maybe only 20 seconds, and he placed his hand on my leg. And he didn't say anything, but his care and compassion reached me. And shortly after that, I wrote a song that said this lyric: "Love is such a thing that I might live for in a world so full of pain." And it was a reframing of my internal dialogue towards one that began to look out. And I am sure that that small action of my father's paved that way for me to begin to walk towards wholeness. That's my example. So and I think I might write to my father and thank him. So this is your homework if you'd like it. Think about somebody who gave you a piece of peace. Breathe into that and give prayers of thanks that might involve an actual card. I'm going to close with one more quote from Peace Pilgrim. "A few really dedicated people can offset the ill effects of masses of out of harmony people. What we dwell upon, we help to bring into manifestation." Amen.